Welcome to my podcast today on the topic of how a routine IRS audit turned criminal. I am a CPA, a Circular 230 professional, entitled to represent taxpayers in any of the 50 states in representation matters before the IRS, inclusive of tax notice letters, audits, appeals, statutory notice of deficiency issues, and all. I don't handle tax preparation per se, but exclusively tax representation. And I've written a book, the IRS Tax Debt Survival Guide. It's on Amazon. It's a practical, plain English roadmap for taxpayers facing audits, notices, back taxes, liens, levies, or U.S. tax court proceedings. My firm's name is Tax Options LLC. It's a Wyoming LLC. You can just enter the keywords Tax Options LLC on Google or Bing, and my site will come up right away. And of course, I have a YouTube channel with a variety of videos. At the end of this presentation, I provide my contact information and my email address. I'll go ahead and provide my email address here. It's jtgreneau@aol.com. That's jtgreneau, my last name, Gren, like November, OUGH, at aol.com. I'm a former auditor. I've done a lot of forensic auditing. Now, the bottom line rule with the IRS, they don't operate by Marquis of Queensberry rules. So let's discuss how a routine IRS audit turned criminal. The case didn't start with an arrest. It started with a letter, a routine IRS audit. Nothing dramatic, no fraud accusations, no CID agents, just a small business owner who thought, I'll just explain it and move on. Let's call him Mike. Mike owned a small construction company, cash heavy, busy, growing fast. He was just trying to keep his business afloat. Like many owners, he handled taxes last, paperwork second, and explanations on the fly. Then the letter arrived, a civil audit notice. The IRS just wanted to review income and expenses for 1 year. Mike wasn't worried. He told himself, I know what happened, I'll just tell them. That was his first mistake. The revenue agent asked simple questions. How do you get paid? Why are your expenses so high? Why don't deposits match reported income? Mike answered casually. He guessed. He filled in gaps. He said a few things like, well, I probably forgot to report some cash, and some of those expenses might not be exact. He thought honesty meant oversharing. What Mike didn't realize was this. The agent wasn't listening for explanations. She was listening for intent. Criminal intent, and now she had it documented. Unreported income, contradictory statements, expenses that didn't match bank records. At that moment, the audit quietly changed direction. Here's the part most taxpayers never see. The IRS didn't warn Mike. They didn't accuse him. They didn't say fraud. Instead, the agent referred the case internally. Still civil, but now under a microscope. Then something strange happened. The audit slowed down. Weeks passed, then a couple of months. Mike thought that was good news, but it wasn't. Behind the scenes, IRS criminal investigation was pulling bank records, interviewing third parties, reconstructing income. Mike was no longer a taxpayer. He was a subject. One morning, 2 agents showed up, badges, subpoenas, no small talk. The conversation was no longer about how much tax was owed. It was about false statements and tax evasion. Everything Mike said months earlier was now evidence. What began as a civil audit ended with criminal charges, fines, restitution. Now here's the truth most people never hear. The IRS doesn't go looking for criminal cases, but taxpayers create them by talking too much, by trying to explain. Once intent is documented, the door to criminal exposure opens, and it rarely closes quietly. Civil cases turn criminal not because of numbers, but because of words. Knowing this before you speak can change everything. So let's go over some key points. Most people think IRS fraud investigations start with criminals. That's wrong. They start with ordinary taxpayers who said the wrong thing or did the wrong thing without realizing it. The IRS does not announce a fraud investigation. By the time you realize what's happening, the damage may already be done. Fraud is about intent, not mistakes. The IRS investigates fraud when they believe you intentionally tried to mislead them or hide the truth. One of the fastest ways to trigger scrutiny is unreported income, especially when the IRS already has the paperwork. If the 1099 or bank report doesn't match your return, that's an immediate red flag. Expenses you cannot support create patterns. Cash-heavy businesses get more attention, restaurants, contractors. If your numbers don't make sense compared to industry norms, the IRS notices. And your own words can trigger a fraud referral, as we discussed. Most fraud cases start civil. They become criminal when statements don't match documents, money is moved or hidden. Once that fraud referral happens, your options shrink. Never volunteer information, never speculate. Never assume the IRS is just there to help. They're documenting everything. Protection comes from saying less, knowing your rights, and getting proper representation early. Most people wait too long. Here's some worse things to say to the IRS and why. I think I owe the tax, I just can't pay it. Why it's dangerous? This is an admission of liability. It can lock in the IRS's position and weaken future defenses, appeals, or arguments. Say instead, I'm still reviewing the accuracy of the assessment. Second example, I probably made mistakes on my return. Why that's dangerous? You just gave the IRS grounds to expand the examination or open more years. Say instead, I'd need to review my records before commenting. Another incorrect comment is, I'll just pay whatever you say I owe. Now, you may be agreeing to incorrect assessments, penalties, or interest without realizing it. Say instead, I'd like to verify the basis for the balance that is due. Another statement that can be misconstrued is, I didn't file because I couldn't afford to pay. Well, failure to file is far worse than failure to pay. This can trigger willful noncompliance findings. Say instead, I'm working towards bringing my filings into compliance. Another comment, I moved my money around. Why that's dangerous? This can be construed as fraudulent conveyance. This can remove protections. Never say this. I didn't report some income. This is direct confession. Never volunteer this information. I talked to someone at the IRS and they said, well, verbal advice from IRS agents is not binding and it's often incorrect. It can also undermine your credibility. Say instead, I'd like to see that in writing. I don't want to appeal, I just want this over. Why that's dangerous? You may be waiving your appeal rights, including CDP hearings and tax court options. Say instead, I'd like to preserve all available rights. I don't need a tax professional. Why it's dangerous? IRS agents are trained negotiators. They're trained note takers. You're not. This puts you at a major disadvantage. Say instead, I'll be consulting with a representative. Talking too much. Everything you say can be documented, misinterpreted, or used later, even in appeals or in court. The golden rule with the IRS is answer only what is asked, do not volunteer information ever, and get professional representation. My firm is Tax Options LLC. Just Google or Bing Tax Options LLC and my site will come up. I have a YouTube channel, I have a podcast, and as I say, I've written a book which is on Amazon, the IRS Tax Debt Survival Guide by Tax Options LLC, which is me. I have a Wyoming LLC just for corporate ease of use, but I've lived in Florida for many, many years. I live on an island off the coast of Florida. My name is Jerry Greneau. My email address is jtgreneau@aol.com. And my cell phone is area code 727-403-9559. Have a good day. Thank you for listening.